The Renters' Rights Act has now received Royal Assent. This means that we have the final version of the Act. We know what we're dealing with, and there's no more speculation about what the final cut will look like. But do you actually know what's in it? Well, I'm here to help you understand what's coming, what to look out for, and how it may change things for you. It's a waffle-free whistle-stop tour which focuses on what's important in under 10 minutes. Less if you speed up the video. And stick around till the end because I'll tell you how you can get support and ask questions. Because although I can summarize it in 10 minutes, it's a complicated bit of legislation that's going to transform the private rented sector. Who am I? I'm Suzanne Smith, and I worked as a solicitor for 25 years and am now a portfolio landlord. I run the Independent Landlord.com website and this YouTube channel to bring balanced, reliable, and practical guidance to everyone in the private rented sector. You can keep up to date for free by subscribing to my weekly newsletter at theindependentlandlord.com/subscribe. Right, the 10 minutes countdown starts now. Number 1, the new assured tenancy system. There's been a lot about the abolition of no-fault eviction section 21, but the Renters' Rights Act is a lot more than that. At the heart of the Act is a new form of tenancy. And this means that when the Renters' Rights Act comes into force, what I'm going through now will come into force immediately for situations where tenants rent a property that's their sole or main home and they're not a lodger and the rent isn't above 100 grand a year. So the new tenancy system will be called an assured periodic tenancy instead of an AST, an assured short hold tenancy. And all ASTs will automatically convert into assured periodic tenancies or APTs overnight. There'll be no fixed term or minimum period, even for students. And if the tenancy is in the middle of a fixed term when the Act comes into force, it will turn into a periodic tenancy overnight straight away. And periodic means that the tenancy will be indefinite, open-ended, running from month to month. There'll be no more renewals as there'll be nothing to renew. And the tenancy will continue until tenants serve a notice to quit or the landlord has grounds to terminate under Section 8, which I'll explain shortly. And so tenants will be able to leave whenever they like, so long as they give at least 2 months' notice in writing to expire at the end of a rent period. And this is called a notice to quit. And this 2 months may be even less if their existing tenancy agreement says, say, 1 month's notice. Speaking of rent periods, all rent periods for new tenancies will need to be a maximum of 1 month. All adverts and listings for new tenants will need to state the proposed rent, and the landlord won't be able to accept an offer from a tenant to pay more. This is called rental bidding, and it will be banned. Applicants will be able to offer under the proposed rent. Any term in a new tenancy agreement that says that the rent is due in advance of the rent period will be null and void. However, existing tenancies won't be affected by this rule and they'll continue as normal. Tenants will be able to pay rent voluntarily in advance once the agreement has been entered into, but a landlord can't make a tenant pay more than 1 month's rent at a time. The tenancy agreement can say that the initial rent is payable before a tenant moves in, but landlords cannot ask for it to be paid until the agreement has been entered into, so signed by both parties, and they cannot make the tenant pay more than 1 calendar month's rent. Landlords will only be able to increase rent if they serve a Section 13 notice using Form 4. And if there's a rent review clause in the tenancy agreement, that will be null and void. Landlords won't be able to increase the rent by asking the tenants to sign an addendum unless they have already served the Section 13 notice. And a tenant can challenge the Section 13 notice at the first tier tribunal. And if they do that, it will delay the start of the rent increase until after the judge has come to a decision. The tribunal cannot increase the rent, but they can reduce it if they decide it's above the market rate for similar properties in the area. The landlord will only be able to terminate the tenancy agreement if they have a valid ground. As Section 21, no-fault evictions will be abolished. And grounds include the landlord selling up, the landlord or their close family moving in, rent arrears, antisocial behaviour, breach of contract, and redevelopment. Landlords will need to allow tenants to have pets so long as the request is reasonable and the landlord doesn't have a good reason to turn them down. For instance, if it's a flat and the lease says no pets. When choosing tenants, landlords won't be able to have a no kids or no DSS policy, no benefits policy. They'll be able to turn down applicants if it would lead to overcrowding or if the applicants can't afford the rent or don't pass credit checks. That's the new tenancy system in a nutshell. Now for the other important bit that will come into effect even later. Once it's launched, landlords will need to have an active entry for both themselves and each property on the PRS database. We don't yet know exactly what we'll have to upload, but it may be things like gas safety certificates and EICRs. We'll also need to register with the Landlord Ombudsman once it launches, even if we use agents. It will be an independent redress scheme that will handle complaints from tenants. The next one is a decent home standard. The government will set requirements for the minimum standards of properties in the private rented sector. A government consultation in July said this won't come into effect until 2035 at the earliest. Awaab's law will be rolled out to the private rented sector, which will set clear legal expectations about the timeframes within which landlords must make homes safe if they contain serious hazards. And if you remember, that's the little boy who died after inhaling mold spores in his parents' social housing flat in Rochdale. And I understand that that will be rolled out at the same time as a decent home standard. Okay, things for landlords to look out for. The Renters' Rights Act will have sharp teeth, as there'll be penalties for breaches for most of the provisions. These include civil penalties from the local council. For instance, if a landlord purports to let for a fixed term after the commencement date, then they can be fined up to £7,000. And rent repayment orders for up to 2 years' rent, which tenants will be able to apply for at a first-tier tribunal for a list of 13 offences. And an example of something that might lead to a rent repayment order is repeated breaches of the obligations to register on the PRS database. Local authorities will also have the right to ask for information and even enter business premises without a warrant if they are investigating a suspected breach of certain legislation, including the rules regarding rental discrimination, HMO and selective licensing, the PRS Ombudsman and the PRS Database. And these rules come into effect on the 27th of December. So I galloped through that really quickly in under 10 minutes, and please give it a thumbs up if you found it useful. It helps my channel. Now let's turn to where you can get help. Landlords have a lot to get their heads around as we move towards implementation. But unfortunately, there's a lot of rubbish out there, especially on YouTube. And make sure you get your information from reliable sources. First of all, the government's publishing a lot of useful guidance, so look out for that. However, over the summer, some of you got in touch with me to say you wanted more help. You wanted to be able to ask questions. So I set up a new membership called the Independent Landlord Hub to give you the tools that you need to take the Renters' Rights Act in your stride. There are courses, templates, checklists, and a fantastic forum for you to ask questions. It's all included in the membership. And I do a live Q&A session twice a month where you can ask me questions. There's no advertising, no sales promotions, just me helping by using my legal brain and my hands-on experience as a landlord. I'll also continue to be putting out free content on this channel and on my website. See you soon, and hopefully in the hub.